Okay. Thanks very much, everybody, for being here today in Canberra. Today we release our economic plan and key elements of our budget strategy, which form such an important part of that broader economic plan. A better future relies on a better economy and a better budget, and Labor will deliver all three. And this release today couldn't be better timed, given we found out today that inflation in the March quarter was 5.1%. This is the highest inflation that we've had in Australia for more than 20 years. This is the highest inflation we've had in this country since the introduction of the GST. Australians are getting absolutely smashed by the rising cost of living on Scott Morrison's watch. This is Scott Morrison's triple whammy of skyrocketing costs of living, rising interest rates and falling real wages. And that's what the number was all about today. This inflation number should be a wake-up call for a government which is out of touch, out of plans and out of time. Now, these inflationary pressures have been building in the economy for some time. And I know the Prime Minister wanted to wave a graph around earlier today. So have a look at this graph, which is cost of living over the last year under Scott Morrison. And what that shows is that the cost of living pressures have been building since before the war in Ukraine. Now, this is a government which takes credit for unemployment falling in welcome ways, but won't take responsibility for the fact that real wages are going backwards in this country, more substantially than they are in the US and in other places as well. On Scott Morrison's watch, prices are going through the roof, real wages are falling, and interest rate rises are about to add to the pain that people feel right around Australia. In this country, under Scott Morrison, everything is going up except people's pay, and they're about to be hit with rising interest rates on top of all of that. Now, after 10 years and $1 trillion in debt, this government has nothing to show for that except skyrocketing inflation, falling real wages and rising interest rates. On every single measure of tax, they've taxed more than the last Labor government did. They've taxed more as a proportion of the economy in total, adjusted for inflation and per person as well. On every measure, they've taxed more, borrowed more and spent more than the last Labor government, but delivered much, much less. Average growth, average productivity, business investment, wages, average unemployment are all weaker or worse under this government than they were under Labor. And that's what this plan that we're releasing today is all about. This plan is all about the three big challenges that we face in this economy: inflation, falling real wages, and the fact that we don't have an economic dividend from the $1 trillion of debt that this government has racked up, more than half of it before the pandemic. So that's what this plan that we are releasing today is all about. Only Labor is taking these challenges in our economy seriously. Only Labor has a plan for beyond the election to make sure that there are more opportunities for more people, that working families can get ahead in this country and that they aren't left behind. We take the challenges of improving the budget, growing the economy without adding to inflationary pressures and getting real wages moving again. We take those challenges seriously. The Morrison government just has a plan for an election. We have a plan for a better future based on a better economy and a better budget as well. Now, this government has dropped the ball on inflation and they have left Australians unprepared for the big challenges and the big opportunities that are on our horizon when it comes to the economy. So our plan is about growing the economy without adding to inflation, getting real wages moving again and getting genuine economic bang for buck from the budget. And our budget strategy is key to achieving those objectives as well. Today we announced almost $5 billion in budget improvements to help fund our commitments and to strengthen the budget and to begin to reorient it towards quality spending and not just quantity of spending. Not 1 cent of the almost $5 billion in budget improvements that we announce today will come at the expense of ordinary Australians, and that's a very important point. Now, the three policies that we are proposing in more detail today are, first of all, trimming spending on outsourced contractors, consultants and labour hire. Secondly, an internal audit of waste and rorts in the first year of a new government. And thirdly, measures to ensure multinationals pay a fairer share of tax where they make their profits, and in our case, here in Australia. So we will support the OECD's two-pillar policy when it comes to multinational taxes. We will limit debt-related deductions at 30% of profits, consistent with the OECD's recommended approach. We'll limit the ability of multinationals to abuse Australia's tax treaties when holding intellectual property in tax havens, and we will introduce a range of transparency and reporting requirements as well. Now, under the Liberals and Nationals, Australians are paying much more tax than they were when this government came to office, but multinationals at the same time are avoiding their obligations to Australians. Too much money is lost to Australians and to the services that they rely on, which suffer as a consequence of all of this revenue leakage. And the same goes for Australian businesses. We want to level the playing field when it comes to tax so that Australian businesses can compete and can prosper as well. So our changes to multinational tax are about levelling the playing field for Australian businesses and making sure that there are the funds available to fund the services like Medicare and other services that Australians rely on as well. Now, our proposals are responsible, they're conservative, they're measured and they're restrained. What we are proposing here with these tax changes adds barely 0.1% to tax receipts and goes absolutely nowhere near the tax cap that the government has imposed. Now, we expect the usual breathless and unhinged scare campaigns from our political opponents. But Scott Morrison and Josh Frydenberg can't have it both ways. They can't pretend that they want to do something meaningful on multinational tax avoidance at the same time as they pretend that taxes won't go up if they are re-elected. They're either lying to Australians about no new taxes, or they're lying to 130 countries around the world that they've told they will join in taking meaningful action on multinational tax avoidance. So the question for Scott Morrison and Josh Frydenberg is this. Are they lying to Australians, or are they lying to the global community when it comes to new taxes on multinational corporations here and around the world? Now, this government has announced that they will do something in this area, but true to form, they haven't delivered. There's always that gap between announcement and delivery when it comes to this government, and we're seeing it all once again. It says it all about a government which is happy to take more tax from ordinary Australians so that multinationals can continue to pay low or no tax and meet their obligations. Now, obviously, we're happy to take some questions, but before we do, in a moment I'll ask Katie Gallagher to run through the substantial savings measures that we are proposing today, and then Andrew Lee to add to my remarks on multinationals. But I really wanted to thank my colleagues in the Expenditure Review Committee, which has met now for more than 100 hours in the course of this term, with Katie or I in the chair. I wanted to thank the core economic team in particular, Katie and Andrew, but Stephen Jones and Matt Thistlethwaite as well, but especially Katie for her work on savings, and Andrew, who has done a heap of work when it comes to the multinational tax policy that we're announcing today. So Katie and then Andrew, then happy to take your questions.